We're going to be solving linear equations, and this is just an introduction. So we're going to be looking at one-step equations and two-step equations. Now for the one-step equation, just like it sounds like, we have one step. So the first one is a one-step. What we have to do is we have to isolate the variable. That's just a fancy way of saying get the x by itself. So in order to get the x by itself, we're going to do the opposite operation. We have adding here, so the opposite of adding is subtracting. So we subtract 7. This becomes 0. That's what it means by isolate. We have the x by itself, and whatever we do on one side, we do the same thing on the other. So 2 minus 7, or a positive 2 and a negative 7, we know that they have different signs, so we subtract, and that gives us negative 5. Looking at the next one, once again, what we do is we isolate the variable. Once again, that's a fancy way of saying get the x by itself. We're going to do the opposite operation. This right here, we're subtracting 4, so we're going to be adding 4. And whatever we do on one side, we do the same thing on the other side. And what I mean by the other side is the other side of the equal sign. This becomes 0, so we isolated our variable. The x is by itself. We have signs that are different, so we know we subtract. The larger one is positive, so that would be a positive 3. Now, this is a little bit different. Notice that we have adding and subtracting here. This sign right here means divide, so we do the opposite operation. The opposite of dividing is timesing by 2. Now, when we multiply by 2, the 2's cancel. We get the x by itself. We isolated it. 6 times 2 gives us 12. Looking at the next one, if we don't see a sign, we know that it's multiplication. Now, the opposite of multiplying is dividing. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide each side by 9. When we divide by 9, the 9's cancel. We isolated our variable. Negative 72 divided by 9 is negative 8. What I want you to do is pause the video, try the next 4 on your own, and see how you do. Looking at the next one, subtracting 8. So the opposite operation is adding. We add 8. This becomes 0, so we isolated our variable. Positive 8, negative 1 gives us a positive 7 because the larger number is positive. For the next one, this is a positive. We're adding 5, so the opposite of adding is subtracting. So we subtract a 5. Once again, that becomes 0, so we isolated our variable. Positive 7, negative 5 gives us a positive 2. Here we have division. Remember, the opposite operation is multiplication, so we're going to multiply by negative 3. The negative 3's cancel, so we're able to isolate our variable. We get the x by itself. Remember, a negative and a negative is a positive, so that would be a positive 15. Here, if we don't see a sign, we know that it's multiplication. So we're multiplying here, meaning in order to get rid of the negative 8, we need to do the opposite operation. The opposite of multiplying is dividing. So we divide each side by negative 8. The negative 8's cancel. We isolate the variable. Negative divided by negative is a positive, so that would be a positive 2. Now we're going to move from one-step equations to two-step equations. So just like it sounds, we have 2 steps. Our first step is always going to be our adding and subtracting. Our second step is going to be our multiplying and dividing. So that's how the 2 steps are going to work. First add or subtract, then we're going to multiply or divide. So looking at our next one, this says add 6, so we know that we're going to subtract 6 to get rid of it, to isolate our variable. So we have 2x equals negative 2. We continue to get the x by itself. This is multiplying, so we're going to do the opposite operation, and we're going to divide by 2. The 2's cancel, So we isolate our variable. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Looking at the next one, subtracting 8. So we're going to add 8. The 8's cancel, they become 0. We have 3x equals 6. This is multiplying. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide by 3, and that gives us x equals 2. For our next example, remember what we do is we add and subtract first. That's our first step. Our second step is our multiplying and dividing. Remember, we're doing our opposite operations. So that right there, we're subtracting 6, so we're going to be adding 6. We get x over negative 3 equals 4. This is division. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by negative 3. The negative 3's cancel. We isolate our variable. 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. Now, looking at the next one, we see positive 5. So we subtract the 5. We get 1/6. Now, just a side note, 1/6 x is the same thing as x over 6. So when we subtract, what we have is x over 6 is equal to 5. And if you recognize that, this right here means division. So we're going to multiply by 6. The 6's cancel, and we get x is equal to 30. What I want you to do is pause this, try this on your own, and see how you do on the next 4. Now, looking at our last 4, this one right here is tricky. So if you miss this one, don't be frustrated. It's switched around. It's really negative x plus 5. That's the same thing. So we have to recognize that this is a positive 5. So in order to get rid of it, we're going to subtract the 5. If you messed up on that, don't worry. Because it's switched around, it makes it a little confusing. Now, if negative x equals 7, then we know that positive x equals negative 7. With the next one, we have a positive 9, so we subtract the 9. We get 5x is equal to negative 15. We divide it by 5. So x is equal to negative 3. For the next one, we subtract the 5. We get x over 3 is equal to negative 3. We're going to multiply by 3 because this is division. The 3's cancel. We isolated our variable, and we got negative 9. And for our last one, we're going to subtract the 1. We get x over negative 4 equals negative 12. We're going to times by negative 4. And what we get is x is equal to 48.